Welcome to the podcast where passion and purpose collide. We are on a mission to interview women and the occasional token man about how their passion and purpose have collided to create healthy relationships and profitable businesses. I'm Elizabeth Denham here with Rebecca Monet. We are the co-founders of the Coterie for Women and publishers of the Franchise Women magazine. So Rebecca, how's it going?
Good. Busy week.
Busy week?
Profitable week.
Profitable week. That's good.
Yes, we like those kinds of weeks, right?
That's very exciting. So, do you have a rose and thorn?
Yes.
What is it?
So I have a family member that works for Zoracle. He's new on board, and he somehow has no sense of time and loves that he's an independent contractor, which means he can work whenever he wants, if he wants. And anyway, suffice it to say, we had a meeting today, and he calls me and he says, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make that meeting because I have an appointment with a barber. And part of me goes, you couldn't do that after hours or on Saturday or another day, but
no, like the regular folk.
Right. Right. If you had a real job, where would you go? But anyway, so then I'll be ready at this particular time. Well, he's not ready at a particular time. Now he's 20 minutes late. So an hour and 20 minutes after our appointed time, and we have a 2-hour slot, we're going to be doing some training. He shows up and he's all kind of puffy eyed. And I'm like, what the heck has happened to him? And I'm finally like, are you with me? Hello? What's going on? He said, well, did you notice that I had my eyebrows waxed? I'm sorry, Elizabeth. It's a good thing we can laugh because part of me goes, in my generation, men did not wax.
And this is a foreign concept to you, right?
No, it's a brand new concept to me. Nor would they take off work to go get their eyebrows waxed. If they did it in private and they did it after hours, right? Certainly wouldn't tell their boss, I'm sorry, I can't come to this really important meeting because I got to get my eyebrows waxed. I was so dumbfounded. I didn't even know what to say. All I knew was because he's very light complected and redheaded, his eyebrows.
He was all puffy and swelled up.
Red. I thought I'd been poked in the eye or something.
Yeah, well, the thing is, here's the thing. If he could have said I had an appointment or whatever, but he gave himself away with the red puffy because you can always see it.
Oh my goodness.
That is too funny.
It's a different generation, this younger generation.
You know, Luke and Richard get their eyebrows threaded.
Well, yeah.
I know. I don't know what to say. Gay boys are supposed to get their eyebrows threaded.
I bet they do it after school or after work. They don't go in the middle of the day.
Lord only knows what they do because they're always very busy. You know, they're busy boys. But they're well groomed. But you know what's funny? It is a generational thing too, because I think Hannah, this is very funny now that you mention it. Hannah wrote an article for the Washington Post about a company that is gearing makeup for men.
Yeah.
And it's like cover up or foundation. It's not like full face necessarily. It could be, but a lot of men are wearing things to cover up blemishes
or scars or
and they talked to, I think she might've talked to people who were on camera, like what kind of makeup did they wear? And then there's some men who are just kind of embracing the makeup. I mean, there's a lot of differences in generations coming up where they're just open to trying whatever.
Again, I come back to the point here. The point around my sword.
I'm going to say the Washington Post is covering.
Get your eyebrows waxed. Go put on makeup on your own time.
Agreed. I completely agree. Do you get your eyebrows waxed?
What's that?
Do you get your eyebrows waxed?
No, I don't.
But I'm bad at keeping up with it.
It's like, I can pluck them if I want to. I'm not going to go spend an hour and 20 minutes in a chair to have my eyebrows waxed.
Oh, it takes 15 minutes.
Well, maybe he had a bunch.
In his defense, it takes 15 minutes. But in his non-defense, if it took him a lot longer than that, then maybe there was some lollygagging going on.
With some other waxing going on that he didn't.
Well, I don't want to know that.
I don't either. You brought it up.
We'll just leave it there. How about that?
I think this conversation is done. This is.
It was entertaining no matter what.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least I feel better now. I mean, wasted an hour and a half of my time.
His secret is out that he gets his eyebrows waxed.
Whatever. So the rose out of all this is, I don't think I've laughed this hard in a long time. I didn't laugh at the time when he was telling me, but later I'm like, did he just say that? An hour and a half of work to go get his eyebrows waxed.
He did what?
Really?
Oh, I'm glad you shared that with us.
Someday when I'm a great grandmother, which isn't that far away, as you know, and I start telling the stories about his daddy, this is the story I'm going to tell. Let me tell you about your daddy's eyebrow waxing.
I'm sure he will so appreciate that. They love those stories that they can never live down, you know.
Exactly. Okay, so never mind my roses and thorns. How about yours?
Well, actually, today was kind of fun. My dad, you know, is mostly retired. I guess you could just say retired at this point. He's just trying to get paid on one case left. And he had this huge desk that he bought when he opened his own law firm from New Orleans. It's this beautiful, gorgeous antique desk in credenza, and they wanted to downsize. It took up the whole entire room in his little home office. And so they wanted to move have a desk that he and my mom could both sit together and do stuff. So he was trying to give it to someone in the family, and he tried years ago, and we said, we have 3 desks in our dining room is an office basically, and we don't have room, and nobody had room. It's just huge. Well, we finally got rid of one of the desks because our kids are all one by one getting out of the house. And so I said, you know what, I would rather have it than give it away. And it's gorgeous. It was never that I didn't want it. It was just I didn't feel I had the space for it. So I'm going to show you. The movers had to move it because it's so big you have to take it apart. So there's the credenza.
Holy moly.
And there's the desk. You can't really see but it's the
gorgeous. I like the curve of it.
It's so pretty, and it is huge. And Donald's going to sit at it because he bought me a ladies size desk a couple of years ago. Now I can't get my camera straight.
A lady size desk?
Well, you know, it's a little more petite.
A little more dainty.
It's more ladylike. But yeah. I was so excited to get it because it is, oh, good grief, look at that. It's nice to have something from your father that this is so funny.
I can't see you.
Okay, here we go. That desk was his big purchase when he bought a building and put it in, and it was meaningful that he had this gorgeous desk, and I just remember him sitting at it for 20 something years. So sentimentally, it's nice to have it, but it's also a really beautiful piece of furniture. So all of the junk from our office is now in this living room over here. And I kind of want to cry because it's a pit. That's the thorn. It's a pit. It's just a pit, but we'll get it cleaned out. And I told Donald, he's a piler. I'm like, you can't pile on this desk. It's too pretty.
It'll get organized. It'll all kind of sift and shift and whatever. But that piece has incredible sentimental value. Some big decisions were made at that desk. So
they really were.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I can't wait for Donald to come home and see it. He hasn't seen it all put together yet. So we have our side-by-side setup.
His and her desk.
Yeah. So very exciting. That's my rose and thorn.
I love it.
All right. We'll leave your roses and thorns in the comments. And if you're a woman and you come to happy hour, we do roses and thorns a lot on Hump Day Happy Hour. So we love to hear it. They're great conversation starters. We've gotten to know people really well that way. So come and see us, and we will see you next time on Roses and Thorns. Welcome back to the podcast where passion and purpose collide. We are here with Tara Riley. Tara's vision has been charting Freshcoat's course as president since 2014. She brings over 30 years of executive management and operations experience in franchising from household name brands such as McDonald's and Sports Clips, as well as younger, high-growth brands similar to Fresh Coat. Having owned businesses herself, she understands the challenges and fears new business owners face, and her desire to help them succeed as she has guides her leadership goals as president of Fresh Coat. With Tara at the helm, Fresh Coat expects to continue its growth in its quest to be the largest painting brand in the world. So, Tara, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We wanted to start off just getting a little bit of your backstory, how you got into franchising, why you were propelled down that path. So give us a little idea of kind of how you got where you are today.
Well, I mean, from the beginning, I actually started a career with McDonald's way back when I was in high school. And actually, I wouldn't say it was a career. Then I just had a job with McDonald's. Never even imagined it would be a career. But as I used to tell people, I didn't bother to quit or get fired for a long time. And as I, that's funny, but as I continued on, I eventually ended up, after going through a lot of roles, I ended up on the franchisor side. I started working for franchisees, like, literally I was just in high school. I was there because my friends were there. It was a good job. It was flexible, but anyway, I ended up eventually going to work for McDonald's Corp. And they brought me in the role of franchise support. And there they called it field service. And I was like, wow, this is really fun. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was challenging, but I realized then, as when I started working with business owners, that I really enjoyed that role. It was the opportunity to help people get out of the business what they really wanted to get out of it. Oftentimes, quality of life. A lot of business owners, when they're running their business, it's a question of who owns whom. Do they own a business, or does the business own them? And I realized that it was really about people. If they got the right people on board and they developed the right people, then everything calmed down and the chaos was much less, and they were able to really get out of the business what they wanted. So anyway, that was how I got into it. At that point, I really realized I loved it. And I had, I often had opportunities to leave. I didn't for a long time because I really enjoyed my career with McDonald's. But when the opportunity with Sport Clips came up, it was really a cool opportunity because it was still in franchising, but it was a newer company. And I felt like my opportunity to come in and really add my stamp of, creating kind of that franchise support role, and, in a company that had not yet really established that, was really an awesome opportunity. And so I did make that leap, but I've literally been in franchising since I started working when I was 15. So
such a rare story, really. I mean, usually the path to franchising is, like bowling with bumper guards, right? Where you kind of hit this way and you finally end up in franchising, and then it becomes a passion. It becomes something kind of exciting. But the common denominator here with Sports Clips and with McDonald's and now with Fresh Coat is this a true kind of commitment you have, or love you have, or passion you have around helping others succeed, to really take a look at their businesses, what's working, what's not working, and find ways to grow their business, where the business, as you pointed out, is not running them, but they're running the business.
exactly.
Did you immediately see that, even with McDonald's, that was sort of something you loved? Or were there components that you said, I don't like this part of my job, I do like this part of my job? How did you just come to that awakening that says, this I love, this part of the business is me?
Well, I think all through my career at McDonald's, the first half of my career with McDonald's, I was in direct operations. So I was, a manager, store manager, supervisor. It was right there. I really fell in love with the idea of developing people. So, even then it was, people would come on board and, to see somebody achieve more than they ever thought they could. Many of our store managers, for instance, never even thought they could be managers. And it was really interesting because, we would always tell you, hey, don't sell this role short. You're running a multi-million-dollar business, and there's not a lot of people on the planet that can say that. You've got, most of our stores had, anywhere from 50 to 80 employees. I mean, when you're managing any kind of business like that, I mean, it's a serious profession. And so it was really cool to see people, and we had people that started with us in high school, much like I did, and that worked their way up into management and supervision and, there's some folks that I worked with back in the day that followed similar career paths to what I did and ended up working in McDonald's Corp and ended up in working with owner operators. And it was really, that environment itself was, I think, is where I developed that passion for really wanting to see other people succeed. So whether it was in a direct role or the franchise owners, when I moved over into that franchise support role and realized there was a whole career around this, is when it really hit home. It was actually at some point when a headhunter called me and was asking, he was fishing different roles to me. He had gotten my name from somebody, and some of them were in the restaurant industry, but direct operations. And I'd look at him and say, yeah, no, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm not even really interested in talking. I'm happy at what I'm doing with McDonald's. And finally, that same recruiter asked me one day, what would it take for you to leave McDonald's? And I said, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Let me think about it. And I really did some soul searching for a couple of days and realized I don't want to leave franchising. That was at that moment I said, if I'm going to do anything else, I want to stay in franchising. I want to stay working with franchise owners in some capacity. And, and I want to help. That's what I really love. When I really looked at it and said, what did I love? I love developing people, but I really, really love that role of helping business owners. And that's when I said, at that moment in my head, it really clicked. This is going to be my career.
It just clicked at that point. But it wasn't like you even asked the question before. You just knew you loved certain components of it, but you hadn't asked yourself, what part is it that is me and that I love and that I'd like to build a career on?
Right.
Interesting.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, when you are a high school student and you are working in a McDonald's as a line server or cashier or whatever you're doing, I don't think a lot of times those kids see the progression.
No.
And even as they work their way up, they might not think they could achieve higher and higher and higher because this is where they are and this is what I know. And you were in a similar situation in your career when they say, what does it take? So what do you think has been your role in helping people understand the possibilities that they're capable of? Because I think that's so self-limiting when we do that to ourselves.
Right.
I think wherever I had the opportunity, whether it was when I was working in restaurants and, and with our staff, and I shared that story a lot as much as I could. I'm like, look, I started in high school just like you did. I'd do it when I was hiring people. I'd tell the story and say, hey, look, just so you know, this is, a lot of people think of fast food of any kind being like dead end job. I'm like, hell no, sorry, my French. It's there's endless opportunities. And when I was in field service and which I was out in the field most of the time, still in stores, right? And it was funny. I'd walk in and I always interacted with the staff. And, I can remember one time I was at a store in Alabama one time and a younger kid says, how do I get your job? And I said, well, amazingly, I started out just like you are. I said, and I explained it to him. I don't know what, where that went, but I felt like the more you share that story, it kind of creates that people first have to be able to see that. Sometimes people don't know because they can't see a vision of it. But when you paint a vision for people, what you can do, it sticks in their head and they can see that path all of a sudden. It's like all of a sudden the path opens up, right? I think that's important in all of like development. I call it, in coaching, I call it the belief barrier. Sometimes business owners, they don't believe they can do this, or they don't even believe it can be done.
Right.
It goes back, the old adage, it goes back to the 4-minute mile. Until Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile, there was all kinds of studies that said, well, it's impossible. And then he did it, and then lots of people could do it because the belief barrier was broken.
It's so true. I mean, it's funny how that happens, and I don't want to get political, but I did disability for a long time, and there was a Black man that I had become very friendly with, and it was during Obama's election, and I said, well, what do you think about that after he won? And he said, now my grandchildren will think they can, because they'd never seen anyone who looked like them do it. So it didn't matter where they came from or what their skill or educational level was. Seeing someone else do something that you don't know can be done I think that's why it's so important for those conversations like you had. I started exactly where you are. Like my son's 18 and he works in a local fast food place here, and he wanted to get a promotion only so that he didn't have to do chicken anymore because he was allergic to the flour. He would come home sneezing every single night. So in his little limited vision of the world, he's like, I just want to get out of chicken. I don't care what, there's no long-term look.
Yeah. and to be honest, in the beginning, a lot of times, several promotions I got, I wasn't even asking for them. It was just, I always felt like I was raised to do the best job you can at whatever you're doing. So I just approached my role, whatever role I was in, I was going to do the best I could, no matter what. And then I would get promoted. There was one time I got a promoter, didn't even know it. I got a raise on my paycheck. And I'm like, like, I called up the store manager. I was, Kathy, I said, I noticed I got a raise. And she goes, oh yeah, we promoted you. Did we not tell you? And I'm like, fantastic. I learned a lot, by the way. I keep these memories because it does stem back to leadership and communication and things, but it was cute. It wasn't, I think it was until I was a shift manager. And then the first time I really asked for what I could do next, I realized I wanted to do this I needed to take on a full-time role for a period, just from a financial standpoint. So I went to our director of operations. I said, what would I be able to do if I was available full-time? I'd like to explore what I can do in management. That was the first time I ever asked for a promotion. And I thought she was going to do a backflip. She was so happy that have somebody else join in. And she was right then, she was very good. What I learned from that is Olivia was very good at painting. Well, here's what we'll do. We'll put you on salary. We're going to take you through the entire training program. There's a whole management development program in McDonald's. And I'm like, cool, and so immediately just started on that path. And that's where, so again, it was that somebody else painting a path for me. I didn't know. I knew there was another level up, and I knew I wanted to be full-time. And so I just said, hey, what would be available? And I think at that point, I just wanted to make sure I had health insurance and, and got a raise. Kind of like your son. I was just trying to get to that, to put myself in a better place.
Right.
So once that vision was posted, then it totally made sense. So
Tara, but back up though, because you're kind of going two parallels, and I think it's very powerful for us to hear here. And that is, you talked about this belief barrier that many have, especially younger versions of ourselves had, and younger folks have. There's this belief barrier, and it has to be broken through to get to that next level of our career growth or business growth or whatever it is. Yeah. But you also were saying that others believed in you. They saw something in you and opened some doors and actually promoted you when you weren't even aware you had this potential, or that there was another place for you to go.
Absolutely.
So these people that believed in you, what is it that they saw in you? Clearly there's a work ethic there. What is it they saw in you that said, we need to advance her and give her a course, to keep climbing this ladder?
That's a great question. I would say certainly there was a work ethic. I think, again, that commitment to doing great, but more importantly, I think I was always wanted to be part of the team. I always wanted to do things, whether it was, I was volunteer to learn new stuff if I had to, cause I was just, I think maybe selfishly it was cause I was bored, but but it was, how can I contribute? How can I contribute to the team? How can I make this better? Even our store manager, I'd be like, hey, is there something else I can learn that could help you, run the store better? I learned to do inventory. I would go unload trucks. I would do I learned how to work on equipment just to calibrate it, just because I was just curious. I just wanted to know, but it was also because I knew it would help. I knew that things needed to be done. And the more, I think instinctively, the more of us on the team that knew how to do things, the easier it was for things to get done. So
I'm going to encapsulate that, because I study business performance, human performance, as a behavioral scientist. And I want to highlight what you said, which is incredible. This combination of work ethic, combination I wanted to be part of the team, combination I wanted to contribute, with something else that you really hit hard, and that is curiosity, this intellectual curiosity. And I see frequently in folks, this is the downfall. There's not enough curiosity to want to learn, to be better, to do more, to take on the next challenge. And curiosity really is a wonderful motivator for us to have personal growth, business growth, spiritual growth, whatever it is. We have to have that intellectual curiosity combined with all these other things that you mentioned to kind of tell us. And you seem to have this almost natural curiosity of what else can I learn? What else can I master? What else can I do?
I think you're right. And I'm thinking about people around me that, have experienced great growth or, and I agree. I think there's something to that because I think people who are curious or desire to learn, and I think that also comes back to the kind of culture you like to create is like a learning environment, right? Well, it takes two things. One, it takes facilitating learning, but it also takes bringing on people onto your, that want and desire and just thrive in learning. And so I think those two go together. I even think back to when I would be running a McDonald's store, and like you said, we'd have a group of people. We had brand new, kids that were in their first role, to transitional people, to older folks. I always tried to have a nice mix because I felt like everyone would learn from everyone. Yeah, it was interesting. I could always tell right away watching folks and just what they did, and were they always trying to learn something new, or were they just happy to come and do one role every day? And I realized it took both people, types of personalities were very valuable. Sometimes consistency, somebody who really just likes to do one or two roles and they do it really well, you know what, that's hugely valuable. But there is that value in somebody that is really curious and really wants to learn different things. And I don't know, there's like I said, value in everybody, no matter what you say. So.
Yeah.
Well, and then recognizing those people who have that desire to continue growing and learning, and providing them the opportunities to do that. Because I was on this kick for a while in my career where all I did was interview CEOs. It was just this, I don't know how it happened, but the commonality in the companies that were the most successful was that they recognized those things. Like they had longevity because they had provided the opportunities to those who wanted to do that, to change. And they weren't afraid of the consistent people were, like you said, very valuable and served a role, but they weren't afraid of people moving around or shifting or growing or evolving or coming up. And they had people working in that company, the one I'm thinking of, 30 and 40 years. Yeah. And they had worked off as a very, very young green worker all the way up to executive. And part of it was because they had invested enough in them to train them and teach them and provide them the satisfaction for their curiosity. So when you're doing that, when you're looking at Fresh Coat, I mean, how have you applied all of these things that you have learned to that kind of guidance and leadership and coaching?
Well, that's a great question because, when I first got to Fresh Coat, we had about 6 people on our team. So we had to be, a lot of people had to be able to do a lot of different roles. And every time I had the opportunity to bring on new folks, what happened was I just said, look, if you like growing and changing and, being in a business that's, ever evolving, then you're going to have fun. If you want to be here just to do the same thing right now, this isn't going to be a fun job role for you. So some of the folks that I brought on earlier, they would, it was interesting. Probably the best story is how we ended up with, I have a whole commercial division right now, but it really stems back to one of the folks that I brought on really early. I think he was maybe the 6th or 7th employee. And he kept telling me, he says, there's a lot of opportunity in commercial. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. And he said, I think there's as much business out here as we want to get if we could just go get it. And I'm like, make it so, and said, hey, if you're passionate about that, and he had a passion around it. And I said, you want to show me what you can bring on? And it was funny because, he was able to bring on some business. And then he realized there was another potential barrier. He says, I think we can bring on as much business as we can if our franchise owners have the competency to handle it, because commercial was a little different. I said, okay, so what do we need to do to fix that? And he said, well, we need to find people who can do it. I said, do we need to find people who can do it, or do we need to teach people how to do it? Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, I think we need to teach people how to do it. I said, okay. So, I mean, he was a one-man show for a little bit, but he showed by his passion, he did show us and, me that, hey, there is this could work. And so, we kept evolving it. And now, right now, there's a team of 3 people who are doing nothing but generating leads from that side and helping coach and train our owners still, because it is a little bit different part of the business, but it's like anything else. We have very sharp business owners. All they need is a little experience. They need to want to do it. And it doesn't take long for them to get up to speed. So I'm always passionate about seeing new things happen in the business, but it was, I have to give credit. Like, it was really Lindsay's passion of saying, there's a lot of business out here. We can make it go.
Right.
But, that was not his original role. Now, he evolved. And that's one thing that's nice about growth and scaling in any business. It allows us to look at all the folks on our team and say, what is their best role if they can specialize? Early on, like I said, we all had to be more generalists, but as we've given, now we have 18 people on the team. There's a lot more room for somebody to really flourish in that, whatever role they're passionate in. So,
So what's interesting in what you're saying is, here was someone who was curious and interested and had an idea,
right,
came to you for some kind of validation, or what do you think? I
right,
think there's opportunity here. And you gave him a wide berth. I mean, you basically said, okay, show me. And so somehow you trusted him, or somehow you believed in him. Somehow what he was saying made sense to you, and you empowered him to go do that part of the business. And then when he came into a roadblock, right, a little bit of a roadblock, instead of solving the problem for him, you asked questions, which is, okay, this is a problem, you're right, so what needs to be done? And he had to kind of find the answer himself. And then even then you said, okay, is that the full answer? What else could be a possible answer? So there's a part of you that is not only good at seeing potential in others, but in developing potential in others. Would you agree with that statement?
I hope so. I mean, that would be one of the things that I would pride myself most on, is that, if I can help let people, like I said, achieve more than they ever thought they could achieve. And to me, that's somewhat development. It's also, like you said, providing channels, but I think there's a knack. I have a knack for looking at somebody and saying, they really have a talent in this area. Can we make use of it? It's a classic Jim Collins, they're on the bus, but which seat do they need to be in? Right. So I would hope that's the case, that it would make me feel good to know, that I've had impact on people's lives, and let them, grow and flourish in that. I wish I had that magic wand all the time, by the way, because I wish I was good at it all the time. So it's like,
I have a feeling you are, and you're not even recognizing the impact that you have. The other part, Elizabeth, after you and I, the 3 of us talked, a couple weeks ago, that we noticed about you was that people seem to feel safe with you. They seem to come back to you, whether it's with problems or ideas, and they come back. I don't know what you had a term for it, Elizabeth. What was it?
She's a touchstone for people. She's that safe space that people can get what they need, get reassurance, get another idea, get some knowledge or skill to make it happen. So, and in doing that, I think also we talked about having the end vision in mind and being deliberate in it and getting there. So how does that work in your mind when you're coaching someone like that? How do you break that down so that they feel less overwhelmed?
That's a good question. Because we coach on different levels. Obviously our business owners are one of the areas we coach. Do a lot of coaching, and I think it's I do think it's first of all, letting them know. I mean, look, you can do this. I have no doubt. The question is, what's the right path for it? I think, never trying not to be judgmental. Like, if somebody says, hey, I have this problem, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, how did that happen? Like, what are you going to do about it? I usually try to, I don't know, I learned that a long time ago, is I always want to ask, I want to know, I'm really, again, maybe it's the curiosity. I'm curious. I want to know, what are you thinking right now? What is your thought process? Because you might be a way smarter than me on this, and I'll just go, wow, that's a great idea. Go for it. You know. So I had a mentor in the past. I think we've shared, I've had a lot of really good mentors, which I've been blessed with. But I remember one time, Jim said to me, he goes, you know what? Because I was in the field, we were field-based employees. So we're, you have to be making good decisions, and you can't always, back then, I mean, we didn't have the, the benefit of text messaging, and I still had a pager at that time, so, he said, look, when you're out there and you have to make a decision, he said, one of probably the greatest compliment I ever heard was, he said, I trust your thought process. He said, if you're out there and you have to make a decision and you can't get any feedback from anybody, I believe most of the time you're going to make the right decision, and that stuck with me. And I thought about that in terms of really wanting to know anybody I was working with, whether it was a business owner or somebody on our team. I want to know what your thought process is, because that's the set of paradigms you're working from for making decisions. I've had some very smart people who were making decisions that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. And after a while, I'd think about it and I said, well, how are you thinking about this? And I realized that they were looking at it from a completely different direction. And that wasn't necessarily right or wrong. Based on their set of information they were looking at, their decision was perfectly smart. I said, you might want to think of it from this angle. So, and then when you do that, they're like, oh yeah, I never thought of it from that angle. Now I'm going to think about the answer differently. So I think that is part of it. It's just always being there to explore the answer. I have my moments, I'm sure. I mean, I'm in charge of a brand. Sometimes people come to me, I'm like, that's stupid. What are we doing that for? But I really do try to, I want to be participative. I think that draws out the strength of any team is all of the capacity of everyone on the team. And you're not going to ever draw that out unless you ask questions and you get people to participate. Freshcoat would not be in a strong place if all the decisions had to be mine. That's for sure. I like to say, I really try to hire people around me that are much smarter than me, or at least much smarter in their field. And I really would like to get out of their way. Just make sure that as a team, we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. So,
yeah. Well, you've definitely proven yourself an incredible leader, and Freshcoat did an incredible job recruiting you, especially at the stage of growth that they were in, bringing you with all the experience that you had to kind of step into the president role and build the team around you. This idea of asking someone, what is your thought process?
Yeah.
That to me is like a massive takeaway. It's not challenging their ethics. It's not challenging of their intelligence. It's simply saying, tell me how you got from point A to point B so I can understand. And then if it's appropriate, then wow, maybe I should start thinking that way. Or the opposite. Maybe you should twist, 90 degrees this way. And here's another way to look at that same thing. So it's non-judgmental. It's taking time to get to know the individual that you're coaching, in this case, a franchisee or a team member. So I think this is.
I just want to add too, it's respectful. Not only is it not judgmental, it's respectful of them not just being an idiot. It's that they've had a different thought process, which makes it, when you're approaching it that way, I think it just comes off as respectful and not critical. You're not jumping to a conclusion that they're doing something wrong,
right,
necessarily. And I think that's going to foster that trust and that communication.
And I think it fosters the very thing that you call a touchstone, Elizabeth. Is, Tara, whether you know it or not, you create incredible safety for people to be fully themselves and yet still open to feedback and critique and opportunity. So you do it naturally, so naturally that, when we bring it up to you each time, you're like, well, I hope so. You are.
Well, clearly it's working, because you've got things going so well with Freshcoat and you've made this path. but I think it's really interesting to dissect it and find out why it's working. And I think that helps other people as leaders, that ability to communicate in a respectful way and to redirect without criticizing. I think you don't discourage people, you encourage communication when it comes from that point of view. And that's what you want.
I want on Tara's team.
You know, I have to say, one of the, you know, you're talking about being a touchstone and that people coming back. Actually, one of the greatest compliments I've had in my career is there's probably at least three people on our team right now that worked for me in four actually, that worked for me in other roles, either at different companies or at different times, who, again, felt comfortable enough that they wanted to come to work for Freshcoat because, I was here, and that's a huge compliment. That to me is a fantastic, probably the greatest compliment I've ever received, is people saying, I'd love to come back. I'd love to come work for you again. And that's been hugely beneficial for us at Freshcoat, because I've been able to attract some really strong, talented people to come in, that I might not have otherwise been able to get, just because of that. So
beautiful. Okay, I hate to end this conversation because this is just fascinating. I feel like we're just starting. So we're going to have you back at some point, Tara. But in the meantime, thank you so much. So in the meantime, how would someone learn more about Freshcoat or reach out to you and learn more about you? What's the best way to learn more about Freshcoat?
Well, certainly to learn more about Freshcoat, obviously you can Google us up at freshcoat.com. You can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about my career or Freshcoat. There's there's a lot of things. Find their local Freshcoat owner and talk to them about their journey and career. I mean, there's so many amazing ways to reach out and learn about a brand. So I would encourage anybody that's interested in any aspect of Freshcoat just to reach out.
The Franchise Woman is a bi-monthly digital magazine that empowers women as they navigate the franchising industry by providing relevant news, tools, advice, and inspiration. We are a resource for women who are seeking to own their own businesses, improve their existing businesses, find creative solutions, and take advantage of franchise opportunities. We feature women in the business who best exemplify our ideals and have something to teach our readers. In addition to our exclusive articles relating to the female entrepreneur, we also feature brands that are geared for women. Women have become the fastest growing sector in business ownership and have become a powerful, influenceable force fueling the economy. The Franchise Woman will give you the news that is relevant to you to help you navigate the path of successful franchise ownership. By women, for women, and about women. We are the Franchise Woman. Join us today at www.thefranchisewoman.com. Welcome to Women in the Know, where we discuss everything from politics and policy to relationships and marketing. We take the things we've learned from our business lives, our personal lives, our interviews, and our guests to share with you in hopes that we can come away having a revelation. Absolutely. So Tara Riley was on this episode, and we were really struck by the way that she leads and the way that she coaches, really brings her teams along. And the term touchstone came to my mind when she was talking, because she seems to be the person that everybody can come to when they don't know if they can do it, or they're feeling frustrated, or they're not moving forward as quickly as they thought. And she is the person who says, I know you can do this without a shadow of a doubt. And sometimes that's all you need to hear. Or this is a normal part of growth. You will get through it. And here's what can we do to break that down. And I think that style of leadership, we talked about it some on the show with her, but I think we need to delve a little more into the idea that that is a non-judgmental way of approaching things that breaks down defenses. So what did you think about that? And have you experienced either that kind of leadership to you, or have you led in that way?
So the answer is I have had a boss like that. In fact, Tara reminded me a lot of Robin Taylor Roth was my boss at Century 21, Sendent at the time. But I agree with you. Not only does it give this kind of safe, non-judgmental place for someone to come and to learn and to ask for feedback, but it's validating, right? It's validating to not be judged and to be heard, and to know you can go to your boss, your leader, and with an idea and it's not going to be rejected. It even gives permission to fail. And I thought that was interesting that she allows that there's room for that. And she regularly creates this touchstone kind of feel that says, bring me your ideas, let's explore them, tell me the process of how you came up with this. I think the way she put it was, tell me what your thought process was. And I thought it was a beautiful way that she put it. She didn't agree, disagree, critique, judge. It was just, tell me your thought process. With sincerity, she wanted to understand their perspective and how they got to a particular conclusion or behavior. It was a great way to manage people, to lead people, to inspire people.
Because so often we want to say, what were you thinking?
I say that frequently, actually.
Well, you know what's funny? I realized with my kids in particular, I don't think I've done it in professional settings. In fact, I know I haven't. I led a team of writers and a designer and videographer in my last job before, I was simultaneously, doing freelancing anyway. I led teams of people and had to make a lot of corrections. And when you're creative space, edits, people have a lot of different ways of reacting to edits and to corrections. So you have to really approach it from a very respectful way because it's very personal. But with my kids, I realize I say,
what were you thinking?
What's wrong with you? That's my thing. What is wrong with you? Why are you doing that? And sometimes it's deserved because you've said it 50,000 times. But I thought, if I had just said, what was your thought process when you left your bobby pins in the refrigerator? I'm very curious to understand the thought process behind that. When you put your milk in the pantry, what exactly was going on in there that I can understand that this would be a good choice? That would be sarcastic.
That was sarcastic. I don't think that's how Tara would do it.
I think she generally was it. But it was such an interesting approach. I had some epiphanal moments during her interview.
I did too. I did too. I'm going to try that one in particular, but she had several. But that whole idea of her truly being curious, because she wasn't just doing it to test the logical side of them. She wanted to understand in hopes that maybe she could learn something too as a leader. And other times it was to extract from her employee or the person she's coaching for them to articulate their thought process. And my guess is in just articulating my thought process, you go, oh, well, I missed this piece. I should have thought this through a little bit differently. So it wasn't her saying you should have been thinking differently, or what were you thinking, or whatever. By having someone articulate it, they're looking at their own thought process and determining, well, maybe I could have done this a little bit different. So they're learning by having to articulate, but it also gives her an opportunity to learn how they think.
That's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking. But now she will be better able to coach them because she's learning how their mind works.
How their little minds work.
So she would probably be able to identify where they might derail sooner than later, or even before it happens. So I think it's an excellent way to extract information about how people think so that she can in turn be a better coach.
Yeah. And she's a phenomenal coach, a phenomenal leader. I'm hoping, Elizabeth, we can get her on the Coterie for Women, doing one of the Hive discussions, because if anyone that's listening to this is in a leadership role, in a coaching role, in a field consulting role, whatever, she's got a lot of experience, and just is a natural touchstone coach, leader. It's pretty amazing to watch her.
I find her her way of her style of leadership is admirable, but she's not intimidating.
Oh,
Sometimes people who have that much together in their leadership are intimidating, and I think she's incredibly approachable,
mhm.
which I think makes her
Safe.
safe, and it makes her someone we all need to learn from.
Yes. So let's do everything we can to get her on the coterie, right?
Well, and the way we do that is by having the viewers come to hear her speak. And
Yeah.
it's not just being spoken to, it's being spoken with. So it's a conversation that goes both directions. So we can all talk together and kind of glean from her experience and knowledge.
My guess is she's going to use the same technique on us
I think so.
in the discussion. Now,
Mhm.
tell me your thought processes as you're
I will look forward to it for sure.
me too.
All right. Well, we will see you next week on Women in the Know.
What do you think is the #1 challenge for franchisors? You got it, getting the right fit franchisee. And as you know, poor fit franchisees are often poor performers. Poor fit franchisees cost more to train and support. Poor fit franchisees are rarely satisfied or compliant, which can lead to validation issues. Not a good place to be. But now there is a solution. Zoracle Profile's scientific spot-on match program. Working with top broker groups in franchising, Zoracle has created a platform that scientifically matches the broker's candidate to the right fit franchise brand. Spot On Match predicts the compatibility, performance, and viability of a prospective franchisee. Spot On Match gives the franchise development team a data-driven and scientific approach to selling franchises. This is how it works. Zoracle works with each franchisor to establish their top performer blueprint. This research assesses current franchisees to determine the key psychographic indicators that separate high performers from mid to low performing franchisees. The final result of the research is the brand's Eclipse report, which compares prospective franchisees to a franchise system's high performers. Finally, brokers are running a spot-on profile on each of their franchise prospects. These profiles are then scientifically bumped up against the franchisor's high performer algorithms, and the match process begins. Dashboards are built for the franchisor and the broker to make sure the process is smooth and trackable. Right fit matches instantly. Find out how you can be a spot-on match member. Save time. Stop guessing. Start matching. Call Zoracle Profiles.
Welcome to Ask Beck and Liz, where no topic is off limits. We want to answer your questions about business, life, and everything in between. Send your questions to ask@beckandliz.com. That's ask@beckandliz.com. Elizabeth, we just got off of the most incredible interview with Tara Riley of Fresh Coat Painting. She's the president there. Excellent leader, excellent coach. We learned so much. I wish I could have been taking notes the whole time. But one of the things that I wish we would have had more time to talk to her about was this idea of belief barriers. And I've never thought of it in the way that she was presenting it. What were your kind of epiphanies, thoughts, ideas around this idea that we all have these belief barriers?
I thought it was profound because, I think a lot of people have a lot of ways at coming at that particular idea, but the way that she put it as a belief barrier was just very clear and concise. And when she talked about when she started at McDonald's, not knowing what even the next level was or what would be a job opportunity where she could, continue to go forward within that company. And you talk about people in different phases of life where they don't even know they could be a supervisor or management or go into something bigger and bigger along a path. So part of it is just educating people about what's out there and what the opportunities are, and then encouraging those where you see potential because that's what happened to her. She talks about having a lot of different mentors who saw something in her and offered her opportunities that she didn't even know were out there. So having someone say, here's an opportunity that you might not know about, number one, and number two, and I think you can do it. Sometimes that's all it takes to elevate somebody to the next phase of career.
And to break down those belief barriers. Sometimes it takes someone else going up against our beliefs and helping us bring those barriers down to open up another opportunity. The example she gave was the 4-minute mile idea, that literally scientifically it was believed that no human would ever be able to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. It wasn't humanly possible. And I believe it was Roger Bannister was the first human to break that 4-minute barrier. And then in the next couple of years, boom, 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 one man after another started to break that barrier. So it was a wonderful example of what she was talking about. Sometimes we just need to see an example and our belief barrier comes down that says, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. Or it takes a coach or a mentor or a leader or someone that says, you know what, I believe in you. I think you can do this. I believe if you do A, B, and C, you're going to get where you want to go. And then that belief barrier comes down.
I think so. That's why, we talked about it a little bit on the thing. Representation is important. Seeing women getting to higher levels of jobs and success when no one before you has done it. We interview so many women who say, I was the first woman in this role. I was the first woman to do this or that. And I think it's an important thing to talk to those women, it's, knowing your history so that you can be better than it or not repeat it. But these women who have come ahead of us, like Jane Plitt, who's going to be on our talk next week, it's important to learn how they navigated those things. And usually they're working within a system to change a system. And I think that when you see people doing those things, that breaks your belief barrier down as well. Like you have a lot of people who are first generation college students or first women in certain male dominated roles or the first Black person to hold a particular position. Those things allow others to believe that they can too.
Right.
And I think that's so important and so amazing. But those are, when you're talking about those issues, those are on a large spectrum. But what she's talking about is on an individual level. When you have an employee or a McDonald's worker, that she was talking about, that doesn't know the path beyond a cashier or a cook or whatever, that there are ways to stay even within that same company and follow a path toward greater and greater success. And so I think it's really kind of neat that she's taking it on this little micro level.
Yeah.
And if that's impacting individual lives, both are important, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the idea of a micro level because if you're telling someone you can be a gazillionaire, that might be too much for someone to handle. But if you can tell someone they can go from being, cashier to a shift leader, to a manager, to a franchisee, to a multi-unit franchisee as an example, right? Mm-hmm. If you're taking them through baby steps or through a career, that you can be a receptionist, but I also see within you these other attributes where you could be this, you could be that, you could be the other. Now it's believable. Those belief barriers can come down more slowly and more realistically. It's hard to go from here to here. Sometimes that's almost too big of a mental leap for some of us.
Yeah, well, and I think there are those people who come from nothing and become president of the United States or president of a corporation or some big huge job, but that's not everybody's common goal. Some people just want to be able to make a living and feed their family and be comfortable, and that's a very legitimate goal. Everybody doesn't have to be the president of the United States or whatever it is. So I think having that recognition that every single, like my son working at fast food and just wanting to get off the chicken line so that he didn't have flour all over him every day and sneeze every time he got home. he didn't really care what the next thing was as long as he wasn't doing chicken. So, but he knew that there was a way out of chicken. He knew that if I get this little promotion that I can get my 18-year-old fast food job, I'm not going to have to do this other job. Then my shy, quiet child who doesn't really talk a lot to others, went to the manager and said, what do I need to do? Like, he had some sit downs and just was like, tell me what I need to do this. And so the guy did. And I think it was within 3 weeks that he was off chicken. But he had enough knowledge to say, there's a next level that will get me out of this.
Right.
And I don't know that some people feel stuck. If they've never seen someone in their family progress past a certain point, they might not think that that's a possibility for them.
But to your point, it's what's the next step?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even Tara talked about that in her own career. She didn't know she was going to be a president of a franchise organization.
Yeah.
It was the next step. What was the next step? And having just enough of the belief barrier knocked down that I can get to the next step, whatever that is, which strengthens my courage and my confidence and my skill sets, which then might allow me to go to the next step, whatever that next step is for that person. So, and she's realistic that way with the folks that she is coaching. She's not moving them. She's not asking them to move a mountain. She's asking them to take the next step.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us get bogged down I think it's important to dream big and have big goals, but I also think it's important to focus on the thing that's in front of you for the next step and the next step and the next step. So it's an interesting way of thinking of things. And I think it's really profound for people who have that belief barrier.
And it's profound how she leads. Well, we could go on and on about this topic. And hopefully Tara will join us on the coterie and take it further. But for now, I want to thank everyone for joining us, where passion and purpose collide and profits are made and relationships are forged. This is Beck and Liz signing off and wishing you another profitable and purposeful week.